right. Make sure we're good here. Had some technical difficulties earlier in the day. So let's make sure this pops up. We got Josh behind the controls today. I don't know if you're hearing me right now. It's possible. Let me refresh it here because it still says 4.5 minutes to go. Come on, come on. Give me some life here.
Should be good.
Oh, there we go. All right. All right. We're rocking and rolling. Let's do it. The deeper dive, Dave Lochran, Adam Shar. We got you a 10-game slate today. Glad to be with you. Deep dive presented by awesemo.com. Adam, first of all, yesterday was an utter disaster in terms of certain players just deciding that basketball wasn't for them, whether it be Andre Drummond, Trey Burke, quite a bit. I played 10 lineups. I cashed 2 of them. I had a lot of Andre Drummond. And both of them cashed at like 258 and 260. Not the greatest night. Low scoring night compared to the night before where you weren't cashing with a 330 on DraftKings.
Yeah, last night was pretty frustrating. Cashing 2 of your lineups is better than I did, where I had, I think, Trey Burke and James Johnson in almost every lineup I played. So
that'll do it.
Pretty excited to get going tonight and never think about that again.
Okay, let's do it. I just had some chicken parm, some pasta, washed it down with the vanilla, the vanilla Oreos?
Yeah.
Delicious, man. Not the knockoffs. Some apples? Yeah. You're healthier than I am from a nutrition standpoint. I like to enjoy my food. The fake Oreos, though, get that out of my face. You show up somewhere and they've got the fake ones and you see the logo immediately and you know that they're skimping on them. I'm not about that life, man. Nobody else should be either. Okay, Charlotte and Atlanta. By the way, of the 10 games we have, 5 of them have double-digit spreads, right? The Sixers, the Hornets, the Thunder, the Bucks, and the Clippers are all favored by 11.5 or more points. So this is kind of one of those slates where instead of me saying, well, I'm going to try and avoid the blowouts, I'm just gonna walk right into them, right? I'm going to embrace it because you can't predict it anyway. And there's way too many games that have quality spots and fast-paced, high over-unders at them, where it's tough to be like, okay, well, this game could blow out, so I'm just going to avoid it entirely.
Yeah, I'm putting no thought into blowouts at all, outside of maybe just looking for spots where I would prefer to run it back with guys from the other team, like if you're paying like $12K for Giannis, as example,
or tiebreakers, right? If you have 2 guys that are projected basically the same, you say, well, this guy's likely to see more minutes. So
sure.
Charlotte and Atlanta is one of them. Not saying that this game has a plethora of fantasy appeal, but there are a few pieces here. And the Hornets are 12-point favorites, but we also have a 232-point total. So a lot of points projected to be scored here for good reason. The Hawks play at the fastest pace in the league. When you look just at the pace differential in general, Charlotte doesn't play at a particularly slow pace, but there's still, let's see what the differential is 5.5 possessions per 48. So this is a quality spot for Kemba, no doubt about it. The question comes down to, whether or not he gets his full run.
Yeah, no question about how good the spot is for him. I have him projecting really, really much higher than I normally do as a factor of the pace here. And still, a 30+% usage rate, 30% assist percentage, should play 36 to 38 minutes as long as the game stays competitive. So I have no issue with Kemba. The only, roster construction wise, I'm not sure that I want to pay all the way up at point guard, especially on DraftKings. I kind of would rather allocate that money for some of the actual superstars on the slate. But if I do roster Kemba in tournaments, I would like to pair him with one of the scorers from Atlanta. This is one of the spots where I think if I'm going to pay over $9K for Kemba, I would like Trae Young, or I would like at least like Taurean Prince or John Collins, just because that kind of maximizes the chances of me getting a ceiling game from Kemba.
Totally agree with that. Not to mention that you could see, it's very possible Jeremy Lin is questionable. So if he doesn't play, you're looking at guys like, I don't know, Jalen Adams, who was recalled from G League but hasn't played a single minute since October. Tyler Dorsey is out. So basically it's Trae Young, right? Just look at the minute distribution. These guys are basically splitting point guard minutes down the mid. Well, no, I'm sorry. I should say Trae Young is getting the bulk of the run at point guard, and then Jeremy Lin is getting almost all, or will be getting all of his backup minutes if he plays, plus a few minutes at the 2. And if he's out, you don't have any. You don't have any Quinn Snyder, or not Quinn Snyder. I'm sorry. The hell is his name?
Lloyd Pierce.
Lloyd Pierce. That's right. Quinn Snyder, not the Utah Jazz. Lloyd Pierce isn't going to have any other options but to play Trae Young for really big minutes.
Yeah, if Lin's out, I would expect more minutes for DeAndre Bembry as well. We've seen him be the backup point guard at times this season, sometimes even over Lin. So I think it would be a boost for him too if Lin sits.
Agreed, but I'd still lock Trae in for 35 minutes if this game stays competitive. I don't see any reason not. Yeah, I don't see any reason not to. I was looking over Prince's numbers today, and something kind of popped off the page at me. It's something that we know about, but also something I want to relay to the viewers here. Welcome to all of you, by the way. Glad to have you with us. Taurean Prince, 55% of his field goal attempts are from three-point range, and 13% are from within 3 feet of the basket. We talk about it all the time, like preferred shooting. I don't even know what the word is. Doesn't even matter. Prefers shot selection is a lot of threes for someone like this, but also being able to get to the rim. And that's why you see so many players be so effective. What makes Taurean Prince such a boom or bust player is the fact that when he's not hitting his threes, he has absolutely no recourse anywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. And the usage has come down as the season's gone along as well. So for me, I mean, in tournaments, sure, he has upside at his price tag. We have seen him play 32 minutes, 2 games in a row, which is nice, especially for anyone on Atlanta. But still, difficult for me to prioritize him. Even from this team, I would rather play Trae Young or John Collins.
By the way, Mobiz says, can you explain more detail how handcuffing one of Charlotte's players to Kemba ensures you hitting his ceiling? How are the two connected? Adam's not saying that it ensures anything. He's saying that if Kemba has a ceiling game, it's almost certainly because this game stays competitive and doesn't, hit on that 12 point spread, which would mean that one of these Atlanta players is also going to get full run, and in order to keep it close, is going to have to produce.
Right. And the flip side of that is if you roster Trae Young, you're hoping that Trae Young, hits 10 3-pointers. If Trae Young hits 10 3-pointers, Kemba Walker's playing 36 or 38 minutes.
Exactly. Right. It doesn't ensure anything. And quite frankly, we don't know who it would be that would get the job done. And maybe it's a full team effort. But it's more likely that if Kemba has a big game, someone else does on the Hawks side.
To be clear, it lowers your floor because if this game blows out, now you have multiple pieces of it.
Of course.
But when you're just in tournaments, when you're trying to maximize your ceiling, if you're going to play, just throwing out numbers, let's say you're going to play 20% Kemba and 15% Trae Young, why not have them in a lot of lineups together because they positively correlate?
Right. And it's a pure tournament strategy. It's not something you're doing in cash at all. Anyway, what else do you have from this game? We talked Kemba, talked Young. I do like Prince, but it's, again, he's purely a boom or bust option. I know going into this that, it could blow out, or he gets in foul trouble, or he just sucks and he could kill me. But I also know that if he plays another 32 plus minutes, he could give me quality numbers at the cheapest price point all season. What else here that we haven't really discussed?
John Collins now has power forward eligibility on DraftKings,
finally,
making him much more appealing over there than he was before. So I like him, a pretty decent amount. I expect him to play around 30 minutes. We know that he contributes across the board, reasonably high usage guy, rebounds well. So perfectly fine spot for Collins. But from Atlanta, it's really just Collins, Young, and Prince as the only guys that I'm interested in unless we get news that Lin is out.
All right. I still think Collins is overpriced, honestly.
I have him projected for like 35 DraftKings points. So it's not, and with the way my projections skew, that's good, but not great. Like he's not going to be in, I wouldn't expect him to be in any of my early, like my top lineups.
Right. He's not a top value, but he's not somebody that's just so terrible that he's not going to show up in any lineups. I get it.
Right.
Let's talk Philly, New York. This is a game I actually have some interest in on both sides.
Can we go back to Charlotte?
Oh yeah. That's what I was saying. Anyone from this game.
Oh, I thought you were just talking Atlanta.
No, go ahead.
So I think Charlotte's a lot more appealing on DraftKings than they are on FanDuel. But on DraftKings, I really like just mixing and matching this team. Like Cody Zeller only played 19 minutes against Milwaukee, but that's a game where Brook Lopez played 26 minutes. And beyond that, you basically just the game went small. So I think you get close to like 28 minutes from Zeller again. But also, Marvin Williams is still 4,500 on DraftKings, which even if you get 30 minutes from him with like 6 at center, which is what we saw last time he played Atlanta, that still makes him a reasonable value option. Malik Monk on DraftKings, though, $3,300. And he's just a guy that in my lineups where I don't have one of the Charlotte starters, like Kemba, I love having Malik Monk in there just for tournament upside because there's a couple ways for him to get there at 3,300. We've seen him play 20 minutes a couple games in a row. He's clearly back in the rotation now. So he can get there just because if he's playing well, sometimes he'll even close alongside Kemba. But also if this game blows out, he would be on the floor in the fourth quarter. So there's a couple of different paths for Malik Monk to get to like 24 minutes here at 3,300. And he's obviously in a good matchup and he's a guy that's not afraid to shoot.
All right. Sounds good. We'll move on. You good to move on?
Yeah.
All right. Marshall Williams says, come on, Dave, let's do some Sixers talk. That's what we're going to do, fella. But we're going to start with the Knicks because I spent a bunch of time writing up the Sixers struggles against shoot first or ball dominant guards in today's deep dive. If you want to check it out, Adam and I write it. We switch each days. It's a lot of words, but it gives you everything you need to know for the slate. Throw some tournament strategy in there, but position by position breakdowns. And you can get a free week, completely free behind paywall, all of our premium content by using the promo code in the bottom right of the screen, Deeper Dive. When you go to awesemo.com, AWESEMO, awesemo.com, join now, select whatever plan you want. And then at the end, when you check out, use the Deeper Dive code and you'll get a free week behind paywall, everything free of charge. So it's definitely worth checking out. Anyway, what I had mentioned in today's article when talking about Trey Burke, I know, plug your nose. And I've said this a lot recently. I know you're on the same page about the Sixers being tortured by shoot first guards or ball dominant guards. And just to give you an example, Kemba Walker, Victor Oladipo, D'Angelo Russell, Devin Booker, Drew Holiday, and Mike Conley have all exceeded 30 real points and 50 fantasy points against the Sixers over the last 3 weeks, 11 games. Kemba did it twice, right? Go a step further. Donovan Mitchell, 31 points, 44 fantasy points. Goran Dragic, who's having a rough season, 22 points, 39 fantasy points. Rodney Hood and Sexton, 25 and 23, 38 and 37 DraftKings points. Etuan Moore dropped 30 real points on him. This is all over the span of 3 weeks. And you're seeing a lot of usage funneled through one or two guys. So Donovan Mitchell might not have an effective or efficient night shooting, but they're getting so much volume. So when I look at somebody like Trey Burke, Adam, I want to throw this over to you. I see somebody who is very capable of shouldering a heavy workload in terms of shots and usage. Somebody that can lose minutes when he's not playing well, but is going to get a lot of run if he gets off to a good start. If you're risk averse, don't play Trey Burke, right? Don't do it. But he is exactly the type of guy that can go out there and drop 30 real points on the Sixers, as we saw happen with Etuan Moore, shoot first guys like Colin Sexton, so on and so forth, and particularly the better guards. So yes, I will be going back to the well with some Trey Burke. He's going to avoid Jimmy Butler defense for the most part, even though Butler has not been a quality defender. And I think Tim Hardaway has similar appeal in this spot because he's also a shooter. He's a gunner. But I think I go with the cheaper option here with virtually no ownership. Talk to me about the Knicks. My rant is done.
No, I mean, I agree with you completely. And the part to me that's really appealing about Burke is that he was popular last night and just had one of his absolutely awful games. But it's not like anything unusual happened. Trey Burke played poorly, so Trey Burke didn't play a lot. But the flip side to that, and the reason it's nice in tournaments, is that when Trey Burke plays well, he gets more minutes. He's not one of these guys that is just locked into like 22 minutes no matter how well he plays. If he's playing well, he can push 28
Exactly.
And right. And so that gives him, monster raw point upside. It's not point per dollar upside. It's actual tournament winning raw point upside from Burke. And on DraftKings, he's still just cheap enough at 4,900 where I like taking that risk. On FanDuel, where he's priced up for his ceiling, it's much, much less interesting. But on DraftKings, I still think it's an appealing spot for him at low ownership in tournaments. I'm with you on Hardaway as well. He's just underpriced as one of the only guys on this team who all season long has been locked into, 36 minutes a night. So I think that, he's just too cheap in a perfectly fine matchup. I like him as well. And then Enes Kanter, still 6,800 on DraftKings is too cheap. Played 36 minutes last night, played 40 minutes the game before that. We've seen Mitchell Robinson play a few minutes alongside of him 2 games in a row now. Not sure that they'll go that route with a smaller Philly team, but either way, Kanter, should at least be in line for 33, 34 minutes here in a spot that has been actually pretty productive for opposing centers this season.
Really productive, surprisingly. If I'm not a big DVP guy, but in certain spots, I'm willing to take a look. Embiid's a good defender, but as a unit, as a team, they really struggled. No one's allowing more points to centers than the Sixers. No one's allowing more field goal attempts. Only the Pelicans are allowing more rebounds. No one's allowing a higher efficiency to the position than the Sixers. And Kanter is someone that averages only like 3.5 personal fouls per 36. He's good at staying out of trouble. I like Kanter quite a bit here. Obviously, Burke is my favorite tournament play just because of the ceiling at the cheap price point and low ownership. But I have interest in Kanter as well, and maybe a little bit of Hardaway. Anything else you're interested in with the Knicks?
Just kind of piggybacking on what you said about Kanter's fouls, it's also makes you feel a little bit better. One of the Knicks beat writers the other day was just tweeting about how high they are on Noah Vonleh, but was mentioning how Vonleh's actually been used to defend some of the higher usage centers that they faced. So there's a chance that even when they're out there, you see a percentage of the time on the floor where Kanter's not defending Embiid.
Yep, great point, and that'll make life a lot easier. I think it is still a spot where Kanter can produce, and you have to also just factor in the idea that Kanter is one of the best or one of the better scoring big men and one of the better rebounding big men in the league.
Yeah, and also unless Fizdale completely changes his rotation, for a decent chunk of Kanter's minutes, Embiid's going to be on the bench. It's going to be Mike Muscala at the 5, and then Embiid will be in there against Mitchell Robinson, fouling him out in the first 3 minutes.
Yeah, Amir Johnson, Mitchell Robinson. I don't see how he lasts very long here. I think it's going to be problematic for him. What about the Sixers side of the ball? I know that Embiid's definitely not an easy guy to prioritize on this slate, but there's no questioning how good this matchup is. We talk about how the matchup is good for Kanter. Well, the Knicks are also allowing the second most points in the game to centers. A big factor here, the third most free throws as well, and a lot of rebounds. So it is a smash spot for Embiid, unlike Drummond last night. It's just how do you work him in the lineups with Anthony Davis facing Washington and Harden potentially playing without Chris Paul.
Right, and then not to mention also a very deep center position. But in terms of raw points right now, I have Chris Paul still in, but right now I have Embiid projected to be the 3rd highest raw point scorer on the slate behind Giannis and Anthony Davis, just ahead of James Harden with Chris Paul in. If Paul's out, then obviously Harden would jump ahead of him.
Right.
But it just serves my point of how much I like Embiid here. Not easy at all to get to from a roster construction standpoint, especially if you're only playing a couple of lineups and playing more optimal lineups. But certainly someone that I would want pretty decent exposure to if I'm playing a lot of lineups, because whenever you have someone like him that is really tough to get into an optimal roster construction, you can just feel really confident that that's also driving down his ownership. So if you can get him in, there's still plenty of benefit there, and it's just a spot where I think he should go absolutely nuts in probably 36 minutes of play.
Yeah, that's the thing. Embiid's minutes are so high this year; it's incredible, and he ranks top 5 in like every category. So you give him 35 minutes, it's a wrap. Another thing too, keep this in mind: the Sixers are 12-point favorites, but of their 14 wins this season, only 2 of them have been by double digit or by more than 10 points. And that came against Atlanta and Chicago. This is a team that lets bad teams hang around, and we've seen it happen a lot. I mean, it came down not to the buzzer, but it came down to the last couple minutes with Phoenix, came down to the buzzer with Brooklyn. I mean, just they go out there and they win games, but they're not, and it's not to say they can't do it today, but they're not just handling teams as they should be with the guys that are on this roster. So it's very feasible that New York keeps this game close enough, at least through 3/4 of play.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Anything else for Philly?
I have Simmons, Butler, Redick, Chandler, all as like marginal plays that I don't mind if I get them, but I'm not super interested in them either. And that's especially on DraftKings where Chandler's still 3,600, but none of them project as great plays for me. Embiid's clearly my favorite guy from Philadelphia.
So my thing with Chandler is I would have had him a lot higher on my list, not because I think he's going to have a great game, but because value was kind of scarce earlier in the day. I would have had him a lot higher if Aaron Gordon was expected to play.
Right. Yeah. I agree with that. And my other thing with Chandler, and I talked about it on the show with Josh this morning, is he's just not the kind of guy that I want to roster when he's projected for high ownership. I agree that he's a really good point per dollar play, but he just doesn't do a whole lot to where I think there's a big edge in having him along with, 20% of the field or whatever, because he's not going to go get you a bunch of raw points all that often. Like, I think just in terms of tournament upside and guys that are more likely to help you win a tournament, going to someone like a Malik Monk in that price range, sure, his floor is like 0, but he's more likely to be the one that goes out there and, scores more raw points than Wilson Chandler does fantasy points.
Sure. Wilson Chandler needs to fall into some rebounds and knock down like almost all of his 3-point attempts pretty much.
Right. And finish with like a 15 and 10 line on 5 made threes or something.
Right. But really, you're hoping for like 20 to 25 fantasy points at that price point, to be honest. It's not something you expect. But like I said, if Jonathan Isaac wasn't a priority value at the same price on DraftKings, Wilson Chandler would have had a little bit more appeal. All right.
Right.
Yeah. Brooklyn and Utah. I'll give you the line. Utah, 3.5-point favorites on the road. They've been terrible lately, Adam. I don't even care if Mitchell's back in the lineup. He is active tonight. 215.5 total. Utah's just looked bad. This is a game where I'm not sure. I'm looking. I don't know if I have anything from this game. Maybe some Rudy Gobert, but what about you?
Yeah, pretty much nothing that I'm prioritizing here. Gobert from Utah, I think, is a reasonable play on DraftKings, but it's just such a deep position that I don't plan on ending up in that price range, really. Beyond that, Mitchell coming back just kind of muddies everything. It takes appeal away from Ricky Rubio. So, yeah, I don't really have anything from that side. From the Brooklyn side, D'Angelo Russell, sure, he has plenty of upside. I don't mind going there, but not a play that I love. Jared Allen, though, at 5,500, I think is appealing. This is another spot that even though Gobert is a good defender, they've actually really struggled against opposing bigs this year. And Jared Allen's only $5,500 on DraftKings, coming off of a 35-minute game his last time out. Even if I project him for 30 to 32 minutes, he comes in as a pretty strong value play. I wish he, wasn't a center, but outside of that, I think that the price tag's just too low on Jared Allen.
Isn't it funny how the Jazz and the Sixers have struggled to defend, as a position centers this year, and they have two of the best defensive big men in the entire league?
Did you watch Gobert just getting abused by Miles Turner?
No, but Turner had a monster game. I didn't see it though.
Yeah, I mean, they were just running pick and roll, and Gobert just couldn't get out on Turner, and Turner was just taking wide open shots from the elbow the entire game.
I don't get it. The whole team is in disarray. They're 14th in the West. This is the team going into the year. Yeah, you don't have Gordon Hayward, but you didn't have him last year. That they would at least be, and it's still pretty early. The West is separated playoff to 14th by 1.5 games. But Adam, they just have not been a good team. They're actually getting their doors blown off in spots, right? They got crushed by 33 points by the Pacers, and then they did win in blowout fashion over Sacramento, but they've been losing some games by a lot of points, man. It's crazy. Yeah, they lost by 50 points to Dallas.
Right. If you told me coming into the season that there was going to be a slate where I lost minutes in a blowout because Utah got killed at home by Oladipo-less Indiana, I would not have believed you.
Exactly right. And, I mean, Dallas has been much better at home, but they beat them by literally 50 points. It's insane. Jeepers creepers. 20 Rick, we'll move on after I answer this question because we haven't talked much about this game. Explain Snyder's rationale to bench Favors, in parentheses, they look great, then insert him back into the I'm assuming starting lineup after one game. They got blown the F out. I don't know. It might have just been a matchup thing. I honestly didn't read too much into it because his minutes are exactly the same, and I don't see him changing regardless of where he is. Maybe usage rises a little bit, but Donovan Mitchell, he did. I think he played like 12 minutes in that game, so you don't really get a good idea of it anyway. Do you have anything to add on that, Adam?
No, I'll start trying to figure out what Quinn Snyder's thinking as soon as I figure out Scott Brooks with the Wizards.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. All right. Milwaukee, Chicago. Let's talk about this. I'm assuming you're good there on that last game, right?
Yep.
All right. D'Angelo Russell's been solid, but this is not one of those slates where I think I can, pay almost $8K for him. It just seems like a very tough thing to do. Milwaukee, they're the biggest favorites on the slate of any team. No surprise, 14.5-point favorites. I watched the first 3 quarters of the game the last time they faced Chicago, like a week plus ago, and Chicago was up by like 20 points at half or something, and you just knew that they weren't going to win. Not only did they not win, they end up losing by 19 points. They just got hammered in the second half. I don't think they're going to get out to as hot a start as they did last game either. If there's one game I look at and just say, yeah, this one could legitimately just be over by halftime, I think this is the one game that stands out to me the most. What about you?
I agree with that, and I talked about it a little bit this morning. This game actually is really, really appealing to me in terms of like a mini game stack because, for one, it has all that blowout potential that you mentioned. But on the other side, Chicago's a really bad team defensively. Milwaukee's a huge pace up spot for Chicago, and both of these teams, and it's one of the most important things for me when I talk about game stacking a game, both of these teams have very, very like concentrated usage, and where a very high percentage of their scoring is coming from. On the Milwaukee side, obviously, it's Giannis, Bledsoe, Middleton, to a lesser extent, Lopez. On the Chicago side, it's Parker and Levine, to a lesser extent, Holiday and Carter. That's it. Like, those are the guys that are scoring for these teams. Yep. And so if this game were to shoot out, you suddenly have pretty easy access to a lot of guys that are going to have a lot of points in, pretty decent matchups. So for one reason or another, like Milwaukee obviously is a good defense, but they just play so fast that it's a nice matchup for Chicago. So I think that's really appealing. And especially because I expect this game kind of to go overlooked a little bit, just because like Giannis, I don't think is going to be a super popular play because of Harden and Davis. Middleton, Bledsoe, these guys all have pivots around them. So I don't think it'll be, that highly owned of a game. So I think that just correlating guys from this game, I would probably put more of an emphasis on that in this particular game than any other game. Just wanting to have scorers from both teams or neither team.
All right. I don't like this one as much as you do. Giannis is always somebody that I'm willing to roster just because, as we saw against Portland, they won by 43 points and he still had 74 DraftKings points. Like, it doesn't matter with Giannis. He's capable of doing it all. Plus, they don't play again until Saturday, so it's not like they got a back-to-back coming up tomorrow and he's going to get some rest. I think he'd still get his 30 minutes no matter what. But with Levine, I mean, you're totally right. He's got one of the highest usage rates in the league. He's playing big minutes in every single game. But I don't know I don't think I need to go there today. 8,100 is still very fair given what he's provided in terms of fantasy points this year. But I just think his ceiling is really limited in this one. And the blowout, I won't even say the ceiling is limited. I'll say his floor is lower than normal in this because I just worry that it gets out of control. I don't think I'm going there. The one guy, Wendell Carter Jr., as gross as it is interesting to me because he's averaging 8.5 personal fouls per 36 over his last 4 games. He has 5, 6, and 5 over his last 4 games. But the guy's still producing, north of a fantasy point per minute on the year. And it's like Fred Hoiberg's happy to give him 30 minutes if he can just stay out of foul trouble, but he can't. Like, did you see Jaren Jackson at 2 fouls in the first 49 seconds of the game yesterday?
Yeah, he was starting to scare me because he'd actually been staying out of foul trouble.
It's crazy. I know. It's crazy. It's just crazy. Now, they're rookies. Rookies deal. This happens with rookies. I totally understand that. But in that same breath, it is a concern. He's also really cheap, and he also now has power forward and center eligibility. So I'm not opposed to Wendell Carter. But aside from that, I think you're higher on this game than I am.
I think the last thing you said about Carter is the most important for me. Power forward on DraftKings at 5K. That just opens up like a whole new
Yeah, it
floor
does.
than if you were a center. So yeah, it's not even that I'm high on this game. I'm just high on the potential of this game if it stays close to have a lot of really, really big fantasy games because I like the matchup for both sides. So it's
That's
why
fair.
I just want to like have whatever exposure I have to this game. I want to have a lot of it just all together in the same lineups, and then have other lineups that are just not affected by it.
Marcus Lester says Chicago will win the game. Settle down, fella. That's not happening.
You're not pulling out a Orlando over Golden State call here.
Well, at least that was close. They had the lead up until like,
yeah.
I was wrong, but it wasn't like I was way off, right? Plus, from a fantasy standpoint, we got what we needed out of it. As long as it stays close. Vooch had another big game. He's just a monster. Anyway, we can move on if you'd like. I will point out, and I think you mentioned them, but Eric Bledsoe is still a pretty decent price point. I don't have an issue with Eric Bledsoe here in a pretty good spot. Minnesota and San Antonio. Here you go. This, it's kind of crazy. I kind of forgot this game was on the slate. Like, obviously did all of my research, and then when I came back to it, was writing. I just didn't find myself with a whole lot of love for this game, and I actually think it's a good spot, potentially a smash spot for Karl Anthony Towns, whose price has come back down. 10K the other day, no chance, no interest. 9,400, it's doable, but it's also a 10-game slate. And there are also a lot of guys in the 9K range that I like quite a bit. And, of course, above 11K. What are you doing with this one where the Timberwolves are 4.5-point favorites, 216.5 total? Pau Gasol remains out. I think that's all the news I need to give you.
Yeah, this one, I'm pretty much right there with you. I like the spot for Towns. I have him projected really highly here. The problem is just it's an awkward price point at a really deep position. So I'm not sure how easy it'll be to actually prioritize him. But if there is anyone I went to from Minnesota, Towns is the guy that I want. On the other side, I love the spot for LaMarcus Aldridge. This is a team that just basically defensively lets him do their biggest weak spot defensively is like stretch fives, stretch fours, and exactly what LaMarcus Aldridge is. And it's not a surprise or a coincidence, I don't think, that he pretty consistently just torches this team. The problem I have is that his price tag slowly rising back up. But we also finally have Greg Popovich talking about needing to cut back on the minutes for DeRozan and Aldridge and needing to find rest days for these guys. Last game, he suddenly just took Rudy Gay out and never brought him back after 17 minutes.
Yep.
And we've seen, we saw Aldridge play 30 minutes. We saw DeRozan play 34 minutes. I'm just starting to get a little scared off by Pop here on a full slate where Aldridge's price isn't that appealing, and I'd have to be kind of fudging some numbers to get him to pop in my stuff anyway. So that's the issue I have with Aldridge.
All right, fair enough. Let me circle back real quick. Bob Brown says no Jabari on a game versus old team. They already played this year, but I feel like we will at least entertain that question because Jabari Parker actually looks like a decent basketball player recently. I mean, he was just terrible to start the year. And now he's actually kind of rounding into form to some extent, rebounding a lot better, which is very important, and actually shooting more. Do you have any interest in Parker here at 6,600 on DraftKings, and over on FanDuel, you're getting him at 7,400?
Yeah, he's one of the guys from Chicago that I'm definitely interested in because he's still playing big minutes. Even with Chandler Hutchison back, he played 36 minutes. But since they made the starting lineup change and you've had Arcidiacono, Levine, Parker all starting, 25.7% usage rate from Jabari is second to Zach LaVine amongst the starters. He has the second or third highest assist percentage behind Zach LaVine, and he's got the second highest rebounding percentage behind Wendell Carter. So he's just doing everything when he's out there. And we're starting to see his shot fall more too. So I think that he clearly has a ton of upside here. I feel really, really similarly about him as I do Zach LaVine, where if this game is competitive, he can absolutely smash the price tag. But if Parker has a ceiling game, you probably are going to want like Bledsoe or Middleton or someone from Milwaukee there because they're too cheap for a full game against Chicago.
All right. Fair enough. There you go, Bob. Fair enough question. Well, I don't think the narrative, the revenge narrative does a whole lot for me.
No, I mean, I've been playing Jabari every day for the last like week and a half. It doesn't have to do with his former team.
Right. Plus, they played them in Milwaukee already. It's not like it was in Chicago, and now it was already in Milwaukee. So if this was the first game in Milwaukee, maybe we'd have a conversation. But Minnesota and San Antonio, we'll get back here. I know you got started on it. You talked to Rudy Gay. I think Popovich is still upset about how things worked out with Kawhi. I read an article on it, basically talking about how Pop finally opened up about Kawhi not being the type of vocal leader that he wanted, and then the author of the article is like, "Yeah, but isn't Tim Duncan one of the best, or maybe probably the best Spur ever?" You can argue me on that some other day. And he was basically the least vocal leader ever. Like he led by example. He was as stoic as you could possibly find. So I don't know, kind of the whole situation with Popovich and Kawhi is just super, super strange.
Yeah, it was really weird. I saw Kawhi's quotes about it. I didn't really know what he was referring to. I hadn't looked at it yet.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I've been trying to follow it, but it's not relevant to tonight's slate, so we'll move on. Anything else for San Antonio?
Super, super, super deep punt play if you're playing a bunch of lineups. Jakob Poeltl's minutes have been trending up.
Turtle.
Yeah. His minutes have been trending up, as a result of Aldridge's being cut back a little bit. But this is also a spot where I wouldn't be surprised at all to actually see Aldridge get some time at the 4 against a massive Minnesota front court. We've seen them play a total of 50 minutes together this season. They both started against Minnesota the first game of the season, but not that I'm saying I'm expecting Poeltl to start. I'm just saying that I think we've seen in a couple of games recently against bigger front courts them play a few minutes alongside each other. I don't think it would be crazy to see Poeltl maybe push like 20 minutes here if something weird happens. He gets up to 22, 24, and suddenly you have yourself a point per minute, $3,300 guy at zero ownership.
All right, fair enough. I think it also depends on how much run Saric gets too. His minutes have Thibodeau has been pretty much, if Saric gets out to a hot start off the bench, he's getting more minutes. He's closing out the game. If not, he's playing like 16, 18 minutes. So that'll be interesting to see. There's no consistency there. What about Minnesota for you?
Towns.
Okay. That's it?
Yeah, I already talked about it.
Yep. I wasn't sure if there's anybody else.
No, Towns.
Okay. Yeah, and Wiggins, I think you mentioned this on last show. I mentioned it on the early bird too. You're seeing now that the minutes declining was not just a blip on the radar. It was not an anomaly. It's real. With Saric and Covington, or with Covington getting the minutes and Rose healthy, or Teague healthy, and Rose needing 30 minutes off the bench. I think unless something drastically changes with his performance, Wiggins is probably going to average around 28, 30 minutes a game instead of 35, 36 minutes a game.
Yeah, I mean, I have him at 32, but that's still, to your point, splitting hairs. Like, I don't think you're seeing a consistent 36 out of Wiggins anymore.
Right. Houston and Dallas, we are still waiting for word on one Christopher Paul. We'll see what's going on with him. Hopefully we get that news. Last time we did the show on Monday, we got the news right about now as I was speaking. And I was kind of hoping that it would just pop up on my feed and lightning would strike twice in the same spot, but no dice. Anyway, he's still questionable with a leg or hamstring or rest, or who knows what type of shit he's dealing with. He's questionable. But it really did go from one thing to the next. It's kind of strange, which leads me to believe that it might be a little bit worse than let on. Last year, we saw something similar to start the season. But anyway, let's assume that he's out for a moment, because that kind of is the biggest deal here. Let's break down the scenario in the event that Chris Paul doesn't play. James Harden this year, I could go back to last year, but I have enough minutes this year to make it interesting. With Chris Paul off the court, are you ready for this? I'm sure you are. I'm sure you know this, but I'm going to say it anyway because these numbers are insane. 42% usage. This is in 324 minutes, so it's not like 15 minutes. 42% usage rate, 54% assist rate, and 1.69 fantasy points per minute. I mean, that is as elite as you can possibly get in any situation, unless you're Boban Marjanovic putting up 50 fantasy points in 15 minutes of play.
Yeah, and on top of that, he's played like 43 and 42 minutes in regulation in the two games that Paul has sat out recently. So he's the top play on the slate if Paul sits. I think that from if he were to be projected to be a lot higher owned than Anthony Davis, I think Anthony Davis is still in the same ballpark in his matchup, which we'll get to.
He is.
But so it's not. There's at least like a conversation about other guys more so than there was last slate against Washington. But yeah, I mean, still, if I project him for his rates without Chris Paul and I give him 42 minutes, which obviously I'm projecting a ceiling, but it's not, a really unreachable ceiling. I end up with him at like 77 DraftKings points. So it's just kind of otherworldly because of the increase in assists.
You broke up on me for a second. What was your last sentence there?
Oh, that the really important thing is just not only the increase in his rates, but that he can be locked in the 40 plus minutes if Paul's out.
Right, exactly. It's just huge. I mean, you're talking about a guy now. Look, am I saying every game he's going to give you 1.69 fantasy points per minute? No, of course not. But across 38 minutes, let's say 37 minutes, just give him a little less than expected. That's 63 fantasy points. Like that's what he's averaging across 37 minutes. He has upside for more minutes and a higher ceiling. The sky is the limit with him. The only question is, what do we do with Anthony Davis? And we will certainly get there. But before we do, just a little bit of housekeeping here. If you're enjoying the show, hit us with the thumbs up. We appreciate it. It definitely helps us out over here at Awesemo, more than you would know. And if you want to sign up for a free week on Awesemo, use the Deeper Dive code, all one word, in the bottom right corner of the screen. When you check out, you'll click on Join Now. When you're checking out, after you select your plan, all you do, put in Deeper Dive as the promo code, and you get a free week, everything behind paywall. Another thing, I don't know if you guys are open to trying out new sites, but Thrive Fantasy, thrivefantasy.com, is sponsoring our shows. And what that means is that we have an Awesemo tournament tonight at thrivefantasy.com. And here's how you can get a free $2 credit, not $100, but $2 credit to get started. All you got to do is direct message at Thrive Fantasy, THRIVE Fantasy on Twitter, or email admin at Thrive Fantasy so they can enter you in the contest. So you'll get in for free. Obviously, it's a real money prize pool, not just a pride thing. And then the link to join is going to be posted in the chat. So keep an eye out for that. But the cool thing about Thrive, now you're not getting your $1 million prize pools, right? But outside of FanDuel and DraftKings, who is the deposit bonuses are not slow drip. They're immediate match deposits, which is really, really nice because all sites only really do slow drip deposits anymore. So it's a $10 bonus on $10 deposit, a 1-to-1 match, $20 for $100, and $50 deposit bonus for $200. It's an instant match, not a slow release. So we hope you'll join us over there. We'll be in the contest along with you. See how everybody does. And that's over at thrivefantasy.com. Just email or direct message them at Thrive Fantasy on Twitter or admin at Thrive Fantasy, and they will directly enter you into the contest. All right, Adam, back to Houston and Dallas. And thanks to everyone for listening to us. We appreciate you. 6-point favorites here for Houston, 218 total. They've been utter dog shit this year. They're 9-10. They're one of the worst teams in the West right now. Granted, it's clumped up, but you get the point. They're only 6-point favorites. They should be double-digit favorites, easy, but they're not. We talked Harden. We don't need to discuss him any further. What about the rest of this Houston squad if Chris Paul's out? Because I think if Chris Paul plays, just kind of everybody is less attractive because most of their price points are priced to no Chris Paul, meaning Eric Gordon and James Harden.
Right. So, I mean, Eric Gordon, his price tag came up, obviously, as a result of Paul being out. I think there's still some excess upside for him if Paul's out because he should play around 38 minutes here, and he's still going to get his shots up. But the argument against him, especially assuming people just go right back to him like they have been the first two games with Paul out, is that we talked about it before the Wizards game, his upside's still through the roof because he's playing 38 minutes and he's got, a usage rate in the mid-20s. But if his shot's not going in, he's still not giving you a lot of peripherals because he's still not getting a lot of point guard minutes because James Harden is playing almost every single minute of the game. So, and like you saw it against the Wizards, he knocked down like 6 3-pointers, had a monster game. As of the last time I had checked late in the fourth quarter, he had 1 rebound and 1 assist. And so if his shot's not falling, you still have a very unproductive Eric Gordon. And in general, scoring dependent players at high ownership is like the easiest thing to get away from. So with his price tag coming up, it gets a little bit easier as well. I still think he would be a good cash play, getting 38 minutes at $5,800. But in tournaments, I would start to try and look elsewhere just and hope that every shot he takes doesn't go in.
Pretty much. Yeah, with Eric Gordon, so in basketball, there's streaky players, and then there's Eric Gordon. He can just be absolute, a dead man with a heartbeat. Sure, he's got a pulse, but you wouldn't know it by looking at him. And now he's definitely playing a lot better. The question for me is if Chris Paul played, and he was still getting like 30 minutes a game, but now we're getting him at 39 and 43 minutes, I think 38 in regulation. So right under 40 minutes per game in regulation without Paul, higher shot volume and everything. At 5,800, can he do it? Yeah, but it's definitely going to take a lot more because he's probably going to have 8-9 minutes cut off the top.
Yeah, exactly. If Paul's in, you're looking at like 32 minutes, and it's just not appealing at all.
All right. What about on the other side of this game? Marshall says Adam keeps getting closer and closer to the camera. He started off okay. I don't know. I think he's all right. I don't notice.
I think it's probably I don't know. It's probably when I'm like doing stuff on the computer.
Maybe just because you got broader shoulders than I do, it looks like you're closer. Stocky guy. All right, Dallas. Luka Doncic and Dennis Smith Jr. are both active. Man, I was really hoping Dennis Smith would be out just so I can load up on some JJB. Get good. If you were to tell me, Adam, that I was going to get 27 minutes out of Barea, doesn't matter what the matchup. You don't even have to tell me who he's playing. You just tell me he's 5K or below. You're getting 27 minutes from him today. I'd say, okay, I'll play him, put him in my lineup. But with all these guys active, I don't know if that'll be the case.
Yeah, I don't have anyone from Dallas that I'm interested in. No. They're just all, I think, pretty appropriately priced, especially for the slate. Like, it's hard for me to get behind $7,100 DeAndre Jordan compared to some other centers. Luka's a bit more expensive than I would like here. Barnes, Matthews, Barea, Smith, like they're all just priced basically where I think they should be.
I would have loved Barea, but we don't get him. I don't mind Luka Doncic. I think he's fine. He's priced up a little bit, but also the guy, does it not seem like he's questionable every single slate? He's guy's questionable every single day. This time with an illness. He's going to play though, so I don't think he's a bad play. Definitely not a priority. Probably more of a tertiary play that if he's in, but not somebody I love. And it also depends on Chris Paul news. By the way, Jeremy Lin has just been ruled out, so I think that's pretty big news if you were looking to play Trae Young.
Yeah, I agree. It helps solidify his minutes because you don't have to worry about Lin. It gives more minutes to DeAndre Bembry. It even probably kind of solidifies Taurean Prince's minutes a little bit because if you're getting Bembry more minutes in Lin's place, it just kind of means Prince needs to play more.
Yep, I think so. And well, another thing too, you know what I'm also waiting on because I think this could make quite a bit of difference is, do we have the Kevin Huerter news yet? I don't think we do. That could shake things up too, because this is another guy that was, I'm not saying he was getting a massive amount of run, but take another 20-23 minutes out of the rotation plus Lin's 20-23 minutes. That's a decent chunk of time where Trae Young and, like you said, probably Taurean Prince benefit here. If Huerter's out, I don't know. We probably, you probably see Kent Bazemore up above 30 again too.
Right. All
right. Got a few games to go here. Got any questions? Hit them in chat. We'll be happy to answer them. Talk to me about this OKC Cleveland game. This is one of the 5 games with a spread in the double digits. Thunder are 12.5-point favorites at home against this Cleveland squad that's actually playing decent basketball, right? Close loss to Minnesota. They beat Houston. They beat Philly. They're playing a lot better recently, and they haven't been blown out in like a week and a half, which is a lot. Anyway, it's not the easiest matchup for Thompson going up against the defensive-minded warrior in Steven Adams, but you still have Larry Nance, who is 30 or 5,300 with Nwaba and Decker out. He played 38 minutes in the starting lineup last game. He's 6K on DraftKings. What are you doing with Cleveland, if anything, here?
Larry Nance, 5,300 on DraftKings. Expected to start again with Nwaba out, but also away from the last game, Tristan Thompson played almost 40 minutes at center, but out of the 8 minutes that he was not on the floor, about 4 of them went to Larry Nance. So there's potential for him to get even more like solidified minutes and more productive minutes. Then you look at this matchup and you're talking about either Nerlens Noel or Patrick Patterson being the backup center, depending on if Noel suits up. Both guys that Nance can be out there for. You don't have to go to, Ante Zizic against them. So I think that Nance's minutes are just really secure here, barring foul trouble or anything like that. Price tag's still too cheap. Just a really productive player in terms of everything he does when he's on the floor. Minutes are really the only issue for him, and they should be there today. So I like him quite a bit. Tristan Thompson obviously has a tough matchup with Steven Adams, but he's just playing monster minutes right now, and it would be kind of surprising not to see at least 36 to 38 minutes here. So he's fine. He's not a priority for me at center. Nance is a priority for me at power forward. But beyond them, there's not really anything here. I'm not buying into Hood's 35 minutes. I think that you probably see him go back to around 32. Clarkson only played 21 minutes in that game. Chatty only played about 30 minutes. So I think that you probably see those guys get back to their normal minutes and Hood lose a couple. So really, it's Nance and Thompson for me.
All right.
More so.
By the way, we do have an active Kevin Huerter.
Okay, cool.
By the way, another thing too. What'd you say?
I said cool. I didn't feel like trying to figure that out.
Yeah, for sure. Where is it? I got to find this. Brian Ognos says Laffy looks like a young Kirk Heinrich. That's not one I've heard before. Do you remember Kirk Heinrich for the Bulls?
Yeah,
he spelled it wrong, but yeah. Except I don't wear the.
I kind of see it.
I don't wear the rec specs. I don't wear the goggles.
Yeah.
What were they called?
I still think Moreland gave us Bertans, but
no, that's just purely insulting. Anyway, this isn't about me. I'm with you on Nance. It's just hard to ignore him here. He played 38 minutes last game. Outside of barring a blowout, I don't see how he doesn't continue to play heavy minutes. And he's a per minute. Since the start of last year, he's a 1.1 fantasy point per minute guy. You're getting that type of minutes, that type of run at that price point. You're going to have a hard time convincing me not to play him. What about OKC?
Jeremy Grant, I think, is okay.
He's the only one I have too.
Yeah, I'm not prioritizing him, but I like the price tag. I just can't get to Westbrook here in a slow-paced game with all the other guys on the slate in really appealing spots. Paul George is just still a little more expensive than I'd like to go to. Dennis Schroeder, I still don't buy into him really with Westbrook active. And then Steven Adams, just not a great matchup and plenty of other guys to go to. So nothing I'm prioritizing, but Grant would probably be the guy that I would get first from this team.
Right. John Canalupo says Tristan Thompson torched Drummond last game. No, look, first of all, I'm not saying Thompson can't have a good game. And quite frankly, he's been very impressive lately. But let's not compare Drummond's defense to Steven Adams. That's all.
I mean, my thing with Thompson is I have him projected for 38 DraftKings points at 6,300, and I can almost guarantee he's not in like the top lineups that I make. So it just kind of is a function of how deep the position is.
My problem isn't that, and it's less matchup because he's getting so many minutes. What my thing is, in tournaments, I have a very tough time playing him because I already am going to have a bunch of Larry Nance, and I'm not huge. Like if they were both super cheap, I'd get it, but I'm not huge on playing both of these guys in the same lineup when they're competing for the same rebounds, and they're cheap enough, but they're not like dirt cheap where it doesn't matter if they're siphoning production away from each other. And I just kind of side on Nance. It's not that I don't like Thompson. It's not easy to play both of them in the same. I don't think it's a good thing to play both of them in the same lineup.
Right, and Nance just plays the easier position to get to.
Exactly. Yeah, no doubt about it. Multi-position eligibility as well. All right, let's keep it moving here. We got 12 minutes to go, and a couple spots that we really need to talk about. The first one, of course, being the Pelicans and the Washington Wizards. Pelicans 6.5-point favorites, 241.5 total. It got as high as 242. I don't know. Is this the highest we've seen on the year?
I think it's right in line with the last time these two played, like last week.
Okay.
Which I think was probably one of the highest on the year.
It was, yeah. I thought it was a little lower last time, but I could totally be. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't remember specifics. But you have Anthony Davis against a Washington team that is dead last in rebounding with Dwight Howard off the court. You've got Drew Holiday, who is actually sporting a significantly higher usage rate than 2% higher usage rate and a higher assist rate, thanks to no Rondo. You have, Julius Randle, whose minutes were strange. I'm going to let you touch on that from last game. You have Mirotic, who's actually seeing his price tag bottom out. And then on the other side, you have John Wall. You have Otto Porter, who I've mentioned I like a lot since starting at the power forward position. And then other guys as well that I haven't mentioned. Both of these teams, Adam, are top 6 in pace. Both of these teams are bottom 4 in defensive rating. And both of these teams are allowing top 3 points per game in the entire league. Two terrible defensive teams that are going to put a lot of points on each other today.
Yeah, and one of these teams is the second worst rebounding team in the NBA as well, in the Wizards. So,
and without Dwight Howard, it's even worse.
Right. And this is a game, like, there's clearly going to be a lot of fantasy points in this game. And I think that in tournaments, the way you want to approach it is to kind of just keep in mind, especially with the Washington side, that there's still a lot of volatility in this front court rotation. So with the front court, you have Markieff Morris. The plan and the goal is for him to play backup center and basically Thomas Bryant is night shouldn't be in between, but I still think that he's a strong play, especially.
You got to start. You just broke up for like a good 30 seconds there. You got to start over real quick. Like we do it quick, but no one heard anything you said.
Okay. A lot of fantasy points in this game. Obviously, Washington front court is still, I expect, to be volatile on a game-to-game basis. So if you're playing a bunch of lineups, I don't mind mixing and matching these guys. Keith obviously is the clear play here. 5,100, playing backup center, in line for anywhere between 30 and 36 minutes, depending how many Thomas Bryant plays. I have him projected for 34 right now, but also close to a point per minute guy when he plays center. And he also gets minutes now without John Wall on the floor with that second unit. So really appealing spot for Morris. But from a price perspective, you have Jeff Green at $4,000. He would be a clear beneficiary if Keith gets in foul trouble, which he very easily could do in this spot. And Green is a guy that they'll need for his scoring as well. So could very easily, go off at 4K at much lower ownership. So I think that he's a guy to be overweight on in tournaments. Like, you don't want your whole night resting on him, but I think the price tag's just too cheap for his upside. The same goes for Oubre. I don't like him as much as Jeff Green, but we've seen him get in foul trouble each of the last couple of games. I think he plays around 28, 30 minutes here if he's not in foul trouble. And it's just such an appealing spot in terms of fantasy points to produce that, having some exposure to him at a really cheap price tag is nice too.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's just a game that I like from so many different angles.
Yep.
Like Drew Holiday, I don't know how you don't like him here. His usage is up. No Rondo means his assist rate is back over 35%. He's playing the 5th most minutes in the league. Anthony Davis is playing the most minutes in the league. Pelicans have the highest implied total on this. You could just keep going on here, right? And with Otto Porter, I still do have interest in him. I think he's still too cheap with Dwight Howard off the court. And over his last 4 games, his usage is still low, but he's rebounding at a higher clip. And with Howard off the court, his per minute production jumps up quite a bit as well. So I have no issues with him in this game. I did want you to touch on this, and then we'll move on. Actually, let me just say, in terms of prioritizing, Chris Paul is in. Let's say it. I'm not saying he is. Hypothetically speaking, Chris Paul is in. Is Davis your top guy?
Yes.
Okay, me too. If Chris Paul is out, we talked about it, but does Chris Paul, does he jump Davis?
Harden, I would have Harden projected for more points than Davis. It would depend on how we project ownership in tournaments, because I think that they would still have, very similar ceilings.
Right.
But assuming equal ownership, I would prefer Harden.
All right. So first I'm going to ask you to do this, and I'll do it as well, just because this game has a lot of moving pieces and a lot of things we need to touch on. So we got to kind of trim it down. Prioritize the players from the Pelicans.
Anthony Davis, Drew Holiday, Julius Randle, Mirotic, Moore.
Okay. That's right. Yep, those are my exact order as well. I don't know if I'll have any Etuan Moore, but if I was going to throw him in, he'd be last. And then Washington, I'll give you this one, and then you can go. Give me John Wall, Otto Porter, I guess Morris, Beal.
Beal's number one for me.
Okay.
Just playing monster minutes. Maybe he gets pulled back a little bit based on Scott Brooks saying he needs to pull it back a little bit, but he also followed that up by saying he makes sure that he sits down during timeouts. So maybe he'll be fine. But, playing right now like 44 minutes a night. So even if he gets pulled back to like 40, I think it's still a really good play. Then Morris, then Wall, and then in tournaments, Jeff Green.
And you're not concerned about, to answer questions from chat, you're not concerned about Randall's minutes last game?
Not really. The minutes in that game were just weird in general. Like Etuan Moore, I think, played 26 minutes. Solomon Hill played 20, mostly coming in the second half. I'm not concerned about his minutes being down. I am concerned about his minutes. I think he plays like 26, which still is not ideal, but it's just such a great spot on a per minute basis for him that I'm not opposed to him in tournaments.
Right. It was weird that he came out in that game because he came out right when they cut the score down to like 8. So I don't know. But there's still such a high ceiling with Randall at this price that I'm not opposed to playing him at all. But those are there it is in order of preference, because it's definitely a game with so much happening and so much potential for monster fantasy points. Orlando and Portland. You got the Blazers at home, favored by, I think last I looked it was 9 points now, 215 total. I'll throw this to you, and I'll just give you the preliminary. Yusuf Nurkic is too cheap on DraftKings and is one of the best per minute guys in the league. Floor is yours.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think his ownership, he's the exact same price as Enes Kanter as well, who I would expect to be more popular and help drive his ownership down. Not to mention that he only played 15 minutes last game because he left at halftime with an injury. So assuming he plays.
And the 2 games before that were both massive blowouts where he clearly lost minutes as a result.
Right. His minutes really have not been that shaky this year in games where he's not in foul trouble, not injured, and the game doesn't blow out. So projecting him for 30 to 32 minutes, I think he just, comes in as a really good play here. And I expect his ownership will be pretty low in tournaments because it basically always is. He's my favorite guy from Portland. If you want Dame Lillard, I think that's fine. I'll have trouble prioritizing him. But he's the other guy from this team that I actually do like.
Yeah, I have Wall over Lillard for what it's worth.
I have Lillard over Wall.
And Kemba. Do you? Yeah, I don't. I think Wall. Pelicans defense has just been so utterly disastrous this year that I like Wall quite a bit here. But I could see it going either way.
Actually, I take that back. I have Wall for more points. It was just showing up like as a weird multiplier.
Okay. Orlando, Jonathan Isaac, top value on the slate.
Jonathan Simmons, top value on the slate.
Oh, really? See, I don't see that at all.
Well, he's like 20% less expensive.
I mean, one of them's 3,700, one of them's 3,200.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I mean it's splitting hairs. I kind of just wanted to disagree with you, but
that's fair enough. I have no. Well, to me, it's not splitting hairs as much because I have Isaac quite a bit higher than Simmons. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean I have them both projected for 30 minutes. I have Simmons projected at like 8x on DraftKings, and I have Isaac projected at 7.1. So like they're both top values for me. I have Isaac projected for like 1 more raw point or something. So Simmons started last game, was in line to play 30 to 32 minutes, lost a little bit to fouls in the second quarter. Going back to last season, playing alongside Vucevic, it's not perfect numbers because it's just hard to kind of recreate this situation. But alongside Vucevic without Peyton or Aaron Gordon, 24% usage for Simmons, 15% assist percentage, and still just $3,200. I think it's a really nice price. Isaac obviously should play. He played 30 minutes last game, so there's no reason to think that he would be limited minutes-wise here. I assume he'll get back into the starting lineup. So I think both of them are just really strong value plays.
Yeah, Gordon left with about 19 minutes left in the game. Isaac played 17 and a half of those minutes. Jarrell Martin played 1 minute and 27 seconds. So I have Isaac a little bit higher than 30 minutes. I actually wouldn't be surprised to see him play around 33 minutes here today, which is, and I just think per minute wise, I like him over Simmons. Granted, I'm not saying Simmons is a bad value. I just like Isaac above him. I like front court players more. I think they have an easier time paying off their salary. Do you have anything else from Orlando? Because we are running out of time and we got to get to this last game.
Fournier and Vooch are fine, but I would rather go to the value guys.
All right, Clippers, 11.5-point favorites, 230 total against Phoenix. I will say this, and then you're going to close out the show. Montrezl Harrell, over the last 20 days, is attempting more free throws than every player not named Joel Embiid, James Harden. I think, Kevin Durant, you name it. He's 5th in the league in free throws with almost 9 per game over the last 20 days. He's been amazing.
Yeah, really good. Nice spot for him. Still difficult to get to because he's priced up. But I don't have a problem. Like, I have him projected for 30 minutes and 40 fantasy points. So I expect him to be productive here. He's easily my favorite guy from the Clippers. From the Phoenix side, I really like Devin Booker if you can get to him. Obviously a huge pace up spot here for Phoenix, and he's assuming the point guard duties. No Isaac Cannon even on the team anymore. Isaiah Cannon, sorry. So I do like Booker quite a bit. I think you could actually make an argument for him over Wall or Lillard if he's going to have the lowest ownership. DeAndre Ayton is in a good spot. TJ Warren should play huge minutes here. Don't mind Josh Jackson as like a Malik Monk style punt where things could go right for you at 3,300 at very low ownership. But Booker, Ayton, Warren would be the guys I prioritize from this game.
All right. By the way, and we're getting at it right now, I just want to point out Gordon's absence opens a lot more up in terms of minutes than it does in terms of usage. Like, he has the 4th highest usage rate on the team. It's 22%. It's not crazy. You're not losing Vooch here. But the minutes are definitely factored in. Kyle says no Lou Will. I'm not big on Lou Will. I just can't get there. Anything else, Adam? We got to go. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Thanks as always for hanging out with us. This is the Deeper Dive. We'll see you back here tomorrow on a 3-game slate. Show will start at 5, not 6. So be here for that. Hit us with a thumbs up on your way out. It's much appreciated. Helps us out quite a bit. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we'll catch you back here tomorrow, same time.